Hey Northbrook fam, me and Maddie here. Wanted to shoot a quick video and just kind of invite y'all into experience we had as staff the other day. Our weekly prayer meeting as a staff, we're going through a book called A Praying Church by Paul Miller. And we were reading through that the other day, and he gave a couple examples of churches that were experiencing some difficulties, and then they, in response to those, tried to come up with a marketing campaign and kind of strategize their way out of those things. And he was using that in a negative way, in the sense of often that is our response to, struggles, or we have a problem, and what does it look like to strategically figure out a way to solve that. And he really encouraged, and it was really a sweet moment just as staff to receive his encouragement of just pausing and considering who Jesus is and what he's doing and seeking him in prayer. And so that was, we were encouraged. We feel like as a church as a whole, that's not something we really get into the practice of trying to strategize. We are, as y'all know, try to be a church of prayer and want to continue to grow in that. But we did realize that there are certain ways that we do try to say the right things or communicate in the right way that gets people in particular to volunteer. And so we started to think about that in regards to these examples. And so how was that experience for you, and as we thought about Northbrook Kids and kids ministry?
Yeah. So just with full transparency, thinking through where we have needs, just the life of the church has changed, new families, people having different commitments, stepping out of serving, and I think the tendency to want to say the right thing, to have the right formula, to invite people into serving that may not have the best intentions, where we want people to just pick up where we feel like we have lack. Felt the Lord reveal that temptation within me, within us, trying to fill needs on our own strength through marketing, and just felt a sweet invitation from the Lord to trust him, to come to him in prayer, and for him to teach us how to pray in our need, even outside of just kids ministry, teaching us how to think through and pray. And just where we are at, last fall we had around 56 volunteers on average, and now we're closer to around 42. And that's just the state that we're in, and trying to trust the Lord and come to him in prayer rather than figuring out a formulaic way in which we can fill that need and have the church fill that need, rather just asking the Lord and having him invite us into and invite the church into just praying for this season that we're in.
Yeah, that was as we had that moment, when we've thought about, I've never been at a church that has enough kids volunteers, so we're used to thinking about this and trying to figure out ways to do it. And even at Northbrook, and we are happy to ask people to volunteer. That's not something that is a bad thing to do. But there's always been a little bit of a tension there in my heart of man, what is going, because I want us to, this is not just like a service the church is providing, or this is us. This is the church that, this is our thing. And when we kind of try to recruit or even make announcements or some of the things we do, there's good intentions, but I never felt like there was this, there was just something that felt I couldn't reconcile in my heart. And then when we had this moment as a staff, I felt like it was just oh, wow, God, you're not outside of this. You're in this. What are you doing? And how do we just invite the church to pray? And so one of the things we were even talking about is even this is not like a passive aggressive, ploy to get you to volunteer. Obviously, there are so many of you that are volunteering. This genuinely is, like Maddie was saying, we had, 56 volunteers. Now we're around 42. So that's a big gap. That's a big difference. We're not able to do all the things we want to do, but this is where we're at. And so what does it look like for us to just go to Jesus? And even one of the things I'm doing a lot personally, we're even doing as a staff, is just that in Luke 11, when the disciples just asked Jesus, hey, would you teach us to pray? And so maybe not even just praying about this, but actually just seeking Jesus in this and saying, Jesus, would you teach us as a church to pray about what you have for us as Northbrook Kids right now, as with the volunteers we have? How would you just teach us? Would you, let's not presume the exact ways that God would even want us to pray, but ask him to help us to learn to pray in this area. So that's the heart behind this. Anything you would add to that, or?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's just an invitation more for us as an entire church for dependency on Jesus, and an invitation to ask him how to pray not just for kids ministry, but for every entity of our life, inviting him rather than assuming that we know the way in which we're supposed to do things, the way in which we're supposed to have a result happen. Rather just say, Lord, teach us how to pray, and relying on faith and not a marketing ploy or a guilt trip, but really relying on faith. So.
Yeah, and so I was even, with this video, I was thinking about, do we, because as Maddie was saying, like, we want to have these thoughts about every aspect of the church, and we'll talk more about that. But this is just a very specific example of the way we can go to Jesus right now with a reality in our church. And so I would encourage you and invite you to go to Jesus with us and ask him to teach us to pray.